So we're talking with Bridget Erdman, a lead animator who worked close with Mark Schlichting on Just Grandma and Me and all the Living Books. Bridget, how did you get involved with Living Books?
Well, I met Mark at San Francisco State University. We were in the film department together, and we took a class. I think it was Marcy Page at San Francisco State. We were in the animation class, and just learning regular 2D animation back in the day, flipping pieces of paper and sketching. And wow, Mark was a completely different person. Like, Mark was this charming hippie guy with his tie-dye t-shirt and his Birkenstocks and his long ponytail, and he told stories about living in a commune, and he was just he's so charming and fun to be around. And he was very excited about animation and what you could do with it. Fast forward maybe a year later, I'm at an event at the Bank of America. It was for the local chapter of ASIFA, and Mark was there. And he shows up, he cut his hair, and I was wearing a red power tie. And yeah, he was ready to go. He was so excited about animation and computers, what computers could do with animation and interactivity. And yeah, it was so that's how I met him. And after that, I actually got a job. My first job was at Atari Games, making coin-operated video games down in Milpitas. And so I guess that makes me, one of those people who had the opportunity to work on computers, animation, before anybody else. I mean, PCs weren't even around. Macintosh hadn't even come out yet. The team at Atari had to make the computers for us to create the artwork. But it gave me experience, and that was fun for a while. I worked with some pretty talented people and made some video games, but everything's exploding, making explosions and making smoke and making cars crash and guns shoot. And I still remember the day they told me that I was going to need to do an animation for a game about Beavis and Butthead, and I was going to have to animate him peeing on something. That's when I decided, okay, I've had enough of this. Like, maybe I should do something a bit more wholesome. And Mark was up in San Rafael, and he had finally convinced Broderbund to give him a chance with this idea that he had, which was an interactive storybook. And he asked me to join the team. So I started going up I quit my job at Atari and started working for him up in San Rafael.
And what were your contributions, as you joined the team? You just came as an animator, or?
Yeah, it started out just as an animator. Mark had this ragtag team of, I think this is just my impression, maybe it's not true, but it sort of felt like Broderbund kind of said, okay, we've got Carmen Sandiego and Kid Pix and all these successful things, and fine, Mark Schlichting, we'll give you a little team, and basically put together this little group of the kids nobody else wanted, whatever. And we had this great office, great repartee with everybody. And my first person that I really spent a lot of time with was Donna Bonifield and Matt, and she needed artwork, and we started doing animation, but with pixels very small. I mean, back then in the day, computers were so less powerful. I mean, they couldn't do anything. So our job was to create the illusion of movement with these little squares of color, and with the least amount of frames as possible. And worse than that, it ended up that the PC monitors and the Macintosh home computer monitors had different resolutions. The pixels weren't the same aspect ratio. So we had to basically redo every graphic for the PC. because we did all our development on the Macintosh back then. It was the only computer that had software that did any art at all. I mean, Microsoft was making spreadsheets, and Mac had Director. So we basically got married to Director. But that team was so great, you know. It was just really grassroots. Joey Edelman playing the piano in the middle of the day. Don Albrecht, you know, the animator from Disney. I really had a great relationship with Don. Every time we ever moved offices, I insisted that I sit next to him because we'd pal around together. We'd go out together, and he'd smoke cigarettes, and he'd tell me stories about working for Mendelssohn and all these different people. Yeah, it was a great group, and Matt and Donna helped me. I think I would say I was an animator in the beginning, and then became sort of a technical animator because there was so much technical stuff that had to go on with the graphics to make them display on the screen. I think everybody had to do that. It took years for us to finally just be able to actually animate. The tools were very limited. And of course, the computers at home were also very limited. And I still remember getting a hard drive. We were all excited. It was like a hard drive the size of a shoebox. And it was like, wow, 20 megabytes, like, woo. And yeah, Grandma was special because of the animations. I mean, Mark used to tell us to, you know, rely a lot on sound effects. And I think there was like a Hanna-Barbera sort of sound effect library that with slide whistles and crashing cymbals and stuff like that. And voices, we used a lot of voices. You know, we played all these animation tricks, like, you know, if a character needed to fall down or, you know, slip on a banana peel, he'd slip off the screen, and then we wouldn't have to animate him crashing and use any animation frames for that. And then, you know, but of course the characters always had to say, I'm okay, everything's all right, I didn't hurt myself. Everything was quite wholesome. So yeah, I was just doing in the beginning animation, technical animation, and as time progressed, I was doing production, creative direction on the books themselves, because we'd get the rights to the books, and then we had to lay out the pages. Each page had, I think we had a format of like 12 pages with 20 clicks on each page or something. And yeah, that was kind of, we'd have these great, you know, brainstorming meetings where, you know, okay, what are the candy canes going to do, and what are the flowers in the windowsill going to do, and what are the characters going to say. And of course, you know, after doing a few dozen of these, it's like we'd run out of ideas. We had this saying, which was, actually we said, when all else fails, make it dance. A t-shirt. We thought that sounded too negative, so it turned into, when in doubt, make it dance. And we had it printed on our company jackets that we had, Living Books jacket. Everybody's favorite task was to be the animator who got to do the dance sequence at the beginning. That was always the best.
In Grandma and Me, were there certain things that were special, you think? Some of the gags or things that you remember?
Yeah, Grandma was definitely the classic. You know, I think I've said this before, but it's so charming because of its simplicity. You know, to me, I feel like we never actually created it again. Like the magic that was Grandma is uniquely Grandma because everything was so simple. I remember one specifically, there was this great little animation of a bunch of pigs sitting at a picnic bench, and you'd click on them, and we just had a few pixels going around like this with this great sound of them like eating. It was, or another one that everybody just loved to click over and over again was the one where Grandma's in the sand and you get to tickle her toes and make her laugh. Kids would just do it over and over and over and over. Yeah, that was really fun. All the animations were they were so satisfying because they were so simple and reactive, really quickly reactive. There was no, we didn't overthink it back then, you know. It was really funny. Oh, what other gags were really great? Yeah, just oh, I also remember that the initial version was in another funny story is the initial version was in Japanese as well. I think we had it in Spanish and Japanese. And the thing was, there was no Kenji typewriters back then. So we scanned an image of the Japanese characters, and then we cleaned them up. You know, we had no anti-aliasing, nothing. Everything was either a pixel or not a pixel, you know. So things got to be really chunky and stair-steppy, and we had to do these tricks of the eye to make it look softer around the edges. But the printing was the hardest, and so we painstakingly drew every Kenji character so that we could, and we got a Japanese person in. And I remember this lady sitting next to Donna, and she's, you know, are these characters okay? And she's like, you know, she put it, you mean a little extra pixel here or here? Yeah, that's better. Okay. We worked so hard on that, and in the end, all the Japanese people thought it was really cute because it looked like a kid had like scribbled it in crayon. Or it was back in the day. It was a long time ago. When was it? 1992 or something. So I also remember. So we started out. We had the Mac. We did all our development on Mac. So okay, we had that version. Then we had to redo all the graphics for the PC version, because they weren't the same pixels. And then Philips came and they wanted a version of Grandma for the CDI. And it was a different resolution. So basically we made all the graphics for Grandma Me 3 times. We had to port it back in those days. Yeah, why pixels weren't square? Anyway. Oh, there's one other really sweet story about Grandma. You know, after it released, we got a lot of letters and people loved it. You know, back then, again, there were no places to put reviews, and you know, so people would actually write letters to Broderbund and say, you know, it's so great. It's my children love it. And there was this one a woman who wrote about her son who had behavior issues. He was handicapped pretty severely, and he really had problems communicating and would throw temper tantrums because he was frustrated. And they were you know, really dedicated parents trying everything they could. And one day they found a living book. They got it for him. They didn't necessarily think this was going to change anything, but you know, it might be fun for him. And he kept there's a scene in Grandma where there's a cow who's at the beach, and Critter is flying a kite, and the kite lands on her horn. So one of the clicks was, you click on little Critter and he says, sorry, in this really sweet voice. And the mother was writing this letter saying, my kid came to me with this and just clicked it over and over and over again for us, basically apologizing for his behavior. And she was just, you know, in tears. She just was so thankful for the product. I thought that's really magical that, you know, we were able to help and do that for them.
So what have you been doing with yourself since then?
Yeah, well, after Living Books, I mean, basically Living Books turned out to be my calling. I love making software for kids. It's just, it's so magical. I don't even feel like I worked. I mean, it's my job. I love my job. And so for the next 15 years, I've made software for kids, doing everything from Disney to Nickelodeon to, you know, Hasbro, and put out maybe 100 CD-ROMs for everybody from Dora the Explorer to Blue's Clues to Mickey Mouse to, you know, everything in between. And then after that, I started my own company called Gizmo 6, and with working primarily with Disney. because Disney had just opened a division that was online, because technology moves so fast. You go from CD-ROMs to online, and I worked on the fairies online and Disney fairies and Mickey Mouse. We did preschool time online, which was a downloadable educational experience for preschoolers, and then after that, everything moved to mobile. So I started doing mobile games and did a couple of those. And in the end, I ended up moving to Europe. I lived in France for several years, and then ended up in the Netherlands, living in Amsterdam and working for a company making virtual reality. So I've been doing VR now for about 10 years, and it's fantastic. So just keep moving with the technology.
Well, I think the metaverse has got its eye on you then.
Thank you so much for the little trip down memory lane, Mickey. That was really fun, and
Yeah.
I miss it. And I'm so proud to have Grandma and Me come out. Finally, our flagship product. I mean, Grandma and Me defines living books. It was the start of everything. Everyone copied it, including us.
Yeah.
And there's something really special about it that we never seem to capture again. So so happy that it'll be out there in the world again.
And thanks so much, Bridget. And you were a big part of it.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.